Part 4, 1787–1791, The Constitution and the Federal Financial System, 1. From a loose league to the need to upgrade the state. After 1783, the Articles of Confederation left a weak central government, no direct taxing power, no national bank, no permanent federal judiciary, and no power to enforce law on individual citizens. Congress could only requisition quotas from the states. Many states were debt-laden, paper money depreciated, and international credit was poor. In the winter of 1786–1787, Shays' rebellion in Massachusetts, rooted in debt and taxes, exposed the risk when the state is too weak, both order and credit fail. In this climate, leaders such as James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and George Washington pushed for a constitutional convention to repair and then rewrite the machinery of government. 2. Philadelphia, 1787, drafting a government both strong and constrained from May to September 1787 in Philadelphia. 55 delegates debated behind closed doors, but kept detailed notes. 3 big building blocks shaped the document. Virginia Plan Madison, a national government with a bicameral legislature apportioned by population, an independent executive, a federal judiciary, and a limited veto over state laws. New Jersey Plan retain a single chamber with 1 vote per state, but increase federal power over taxation and commerce. The Great Compromise, a House of Representatives by population, a Senate with 2 seats per state. Other sensitive compromises: 3/5 for apportioning House seats and direct taxes. Each enslaved person counted as 3/5 of a free person. Transatlantic Slave Trade Congress could prohibit it after 1808. Before then, a maximum $10 duty per imported person. Fugitive Slave Clause required the return of enslaved persons who fled to another state. Commerce and tariffs. The federal government controlled interstate and foreign commerce and could levy import duties. Export taxes were forbidden. Electoral College, the president chosen by electors, a 4-year term. A qualified veto subject to override. Appointments with the Senate's advice and consent. Separation of powers and checks and balances. Article 1, Legislative. Article 2, Executive. Article 3, Judicial. Supremacy Clause. Federal laws and treaties are the supreme law of the land. On September 17, 1787, the Constitution was signed. It would take effect only after ratification by 9 of 13 state conventions, a large test of public will. 3. The ratification debate, Federalists versus Anti-Federalists. In 1787–1788, the pamphlet war exploded. Federalist Hamilton Madison J. wrote the Federalist Papers arguing for a stronger but constrained union, checking factions, and extending the Republic across a large sphere to diffuse interests. Anti-Federalists. Patrick Henry George Mason, Elbridge Gerry and others feared concentration of power and demanded a Bill of Rights to protect free speech, religion, press, due process, arms, etc. Key timeline: Delaware ratified 1st December 1787, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia and Connecticut followed. Massachusetts, February 1788, ratified with recommended amendments, an approach later used by Virginia and New York. New Hampshire became the 9th state, June 1788, triggering implementation in 1789 for the ratifying states. Virginia and New York. June–July 1788, ratified, narrowly helped by the promise of future amendments. North Carolina and Rhode Island joined later after the Bill of Rights was underway. Result: a living constitution strong enough to tax, borrow, and enforce, yet bound by courts, Congress elections, and soon a Bill of Rights. 4. Launching the new government, 1789, meshing the institutional gears. In April 1789, George Washington took the oath in New York. The cabinet emerged: Alexander Hamilton Treasury, Thomas Jefferson State, Henry Knox War, Edmund Randolph Attorney General. 3 foundational acts. Judiciary Act of 1789 created a Supreme Court, 6 justices, 3 federal circuit courts and 13 district courts. Section 25 allowed Supreme Court review of highest state court judgments that implicated federal law or the Constitution, establishing federal judicial supremacy. Tariff Act of 1789 imposed import duties to raise revenue and offer modest protection. Bill of Rights. Madison proposed 12 amendments. 10 were ratified by the states as Amendments 1X, 1791. Amendments IX guaranteed core liberties: speech, press, religion, assembly, and petition 1, arms 2, no peacetime quartering 3, reasonable searches and seizures 4, due process, self-incrimination takings v, fair criminal trial 6, civil jury 7, no cruel and unusual punishments 8, unenumerated rights 9, and powers reserved to states, people x 5, Hamilton and the problem of restoring credit. To make the young republic durable, it had to pay on time and create a capital market. Hamilton submitted 3 strategic reports, a report on public credit, 1790. Funding and assumption, funding at par exchange, all depreciated federal war certificates for new interest-bearing bonds, signaling that the United States honors its contracts. Assumption. The federal government would assume state debts, consolidating them into a single national ledger, raising credit and tying creditors' interest to the Union. Opposition Southerners, many states had paid much of their debt, called it unfair. Others decried speculation. The dinner table, compromise of 1790. Jefferson, Madison, Hamilton yielded assumption in exchange for placing the permanent capital on the Potomac Residence Act. 1790, the future Washington, D.C., B Bank of the United States. 1791, a credit circulation engine, a public-private institution in Philadelphia. Issued redeemable banknotes, served as federal depository, discounted bills of exchange, and moved capital across states. Constitutional debate. Jefferson and Madison read Article 1 narrowly: bank not listed. Hamilton invoked the necessary and proper clause, means appropriate to taxing borrowing and regulating commerce. Washington signed, setting a precedent for implied powers. C. Report on Manufactures, 1791. Encouraging industry, proposed selective tariffs, domestic bounties, transport improvements, and infant industry protection. Congress did not adopt it wholesale, but the industrial vision took root. Also, the 1791 excise on whiskey to secure internal revenue, touching off frontier resistance. The Whiskey Rebellion of 1794 lies beyond this part, but flowed from this policy. 6 building pipelines for money and the rule of law. The parts worked in concert: customs duties plus the whiskey excise, predictable Treasury revenues. A national bank, safe depository circulating credit, standardized federal payments across states. The Federal Judiciary Act, ultimate arbiter for contracts, debts, and federal-state conflicts. The Bill of Rights, political legal trust that citizens' and investors' basic liberties were shielded. By 1791, federal securities appreciated, rates settled into order. Interstate commerce flowed more smoothly, and international credit improved. The constitutional fights, the Bank Clause interpretation, simultaneously traced the outlines of 2 parties, Federalists versus Democratic Republicans. 7 unresolved problems: slavery, the West, and federal-state balance. Slavery, the Constitution compromised but did not solve. The trade to be reconsidered after 1808. 3/5 skewed representation toward slaveholding states. The Fugitive Slave Clause provoked federal-state enforcement conflicts. Territory, the Northwest Ordinance, 1787. Though under the Articles fit the new spirit, set a path to statehood, banned slavery in the Northwest Territory, and encouraged public education, a template for future expansion. Balance, the 10th Amendment preserved space for states' people, while the Supremacy Clause and Section 25 of the Judiciary Act secured federal supremacy, a designed tension to be resolved through case law. 8. Why 1787? 1791 was an institutional financial turning point. In 4 short years, the United States shifted from a debt-ridden confederation to a fiscally capable state one. The Constitution created incentives and restraints, clear powers with real checks. 2. Judiciary and federal supremacy safeguarded contracts and the common market. 3. Treasury bank tariffs, excise, established the financial bloodstream and rebuilt credit. 4. Bill of Rights laid a rights corridor that increased social trust in the new government. From here, the tracks for a monetary contractual infrastructure economy were in place. Bonds had buyer's bills, had a place to be discounted. Disputes had courts, and basic liberties had textual guarantees. The fierce debates over the bank protection versus free trade, big versus small states, did not weaken the system. They nourished a culture of argument, compromise, and the rule of law.